Hi, welcome to Excel Macro Theory. In this particular portion of the lesson, I would like to cover about what is the underlying theory aspects of Excel Macro. I'll be covering things like variables, functions, subroutine, but in greater detail compared to the first portion, which I shown you a physical actual example. So in this particular lesson, you will be learning more about how to create your own macro by acknowledging the rules of a macro. So let us begin the theory portion. Okay, we have seen in part 1 whereby we try recording a macro and utilize the functions by running a recorded macro, changing and manipulating the values inside to achieve the result that we want. Now, let us look at the theory portion of the macro. This means that I'll be explaining more in detail the overall structure of how a subroutine looks like and the variables that are used to store the information of the data. Are you ready? Let's begin. As explained previously, SUV means it's a subroutine. So in this case, I will create a subroutine called sub learning about variables. Inside this subroutine, which ends with an end sub, I have dimension str as string. String is basically any word. For example, John, the name John is a string. Computer is a string. When we spell fully, dimension I as integer. Example, this represents normally number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Next, we have dimension D as double. Example, 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, 1.4. This means double has decimal places. Next, we have dimension B as Boolean, which means the variable is either a true or false values. You'll notice that we normally will define DIM in front, which means dimension. With this, we have just established 4 types of variable to store our data. I'll proceed on in detail how to store and utilize each of these types of data variables. Now let us continue. We will use the command message box, that means to display the values in a dialog box. Okay, I will show it later. Display str equals to, you realize that when we mention str equals to in between the quotation and appending with the end string, we actually imply we want to show the command to be run as str equals to computer. For the case of the second line, message box, quotation I equals to end quote, and I will display a value of I equals to 5. Maybe let me illustrate this through the example. First, stop or reset all macro. Now run it. You'll see they'll display first as str equals to computer. Next, they will show I equals to 5, followed by I equals to 1.2, and followed by B equals to true. This is how simple variables can be stored and run accordingly. With this, you have just achieved the first step of using variables. Now, I will break you up for practices so that you can practice with the variables with the examples given to you. Hi, next we will introduce another type of variables called constant. If you were to see, constants is defined with COST, C equals to 100. This means that the value of C will not change. And if I attempt to change maybe C to other values, you'll realize that this is not permitted, as seen by the error here. Assignment to constants not permitted. This is another type of constants whereby you do not want the value to change. So we assign it as a constant. Just to summarize and reiterate before we move on, any subroutine needs to have a name, and every subroutine needs to start with a sub and ends with a end sub. Then how does a function works? Function is another type of items in VBA which allows you to return values. You'll notice that sub and end sub do not return any values. I will try to explain now what is a function. Hi. Now let us move on to the next section called function. Okay, what's the difference between the function and a subroutine? A function returns a value end of the day and it takes in input. For instance, if you want to calculate a profit of a product, what we can do is we define function profit as a double. You all know what is double, right? It's basically a number with decimal places. So taking the input of price as double and cost as double. And we have the formula profit is equal to price minus cost. Now, how to use this function? Let's do this. Let's define a subroutine called calculate profit. And inside this routine, I will define dimension price as double, dimension cost as double, and I will have price equals to maybe 100, cost maybe equals to 80, $100, 80 cents maybe. Yeah. Okay. Now let's calculate the profit. The profit will be equals to price 100.8, 80.2. We have to return this to a, maybe we display this through a message box. Now let's run this. The answer is 20.6, which is the answer for the calculation. Now, let me explain. When you have a calculate profit function subroutine, when you define price and cost and define the input, you calculate this through the message box. Wrong. You calculate this through the profit function, which is equivalent to this, and display the value through the message box. So when we put price as 100.8, it is passed in from 108 over here down into this variable price. Similarly, 80.2 is passed down from cost to this variable here, and they calculate the values of profit here. After a while, you'll realize that defining a function in Excel is not that difficult, right? So this session ends the differences between a function and a subroutine. Remember, a subroutine does not return any values, whereas a function, it returns a value. That's all for now.